Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 281st installment in the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshat Acharei Mot Kedoshim, a double Parsha. And we mentioned many times double Parsha because we have an obligation to finish the entire Torah in a single year. So some Parshas are going to get doubled up in order for us to do that. So this is one of the Parshas that usually gets doubled up. Parshat Acharei Mot talks about the death of Aaron's sons, talks about Yom Kippur. Right, and the he-goat for Azazel and what that represents, and then we got a service for the sake of the tabernacle, or a service outside the tabernacle, and then you got Parshas. You got forbidden relationships, and in Parshas Kedoshim, a lot of things about immorality, right, or about, let's say, better about ethics. Right, about holiness, what it means, holiness, gifts to the poor, right, all kinds of things, all kinds of things over love your fellow, forbidden mixtures, fruit trees, weights and measures, punishments, molech, a lot of interesting things over here. So the Torah says, chapter 18, verse 28. Right, so it talks about chapter 18, all about forbidden relationships, etc. And then the end it says, let not the land disgorge you, i.e., throw you out for having contaminated it, as it disgorged the nation that was before you. If anyone who commits, verse 29, anyone who commits any of these abominations, people doing so will be cut off from among the people. Right. So what do I see over here? So Torah tells me very clear that if Jews in the land engage in immorality, right? That's what the whole chapter 18, forbidden relationships, right? That's what it's talking about. That's what it's talking about. Nakedness of your father, nakedness of your mother, shall not uncover. She is your mother, shall not uncover her nakedness. Nakedness of your father's wife. Nakedness of your sister, nakedness of your son's daughter, right? Homosexuality speaks about bestiality, etc. Then it says, don't do any of these things because then the land will spit you out. The land of Israel will spit you out, right? So there are things that a person can do, even if we have the land like we do today. We do have the land of Israel in our hands. Regardless, even if the land of Israel is in our hands, the land of Israel could spit us out. In other words, the Messiah comes as the Medrash in Psalms, in the book of Psalms in Tehillim, that says when the Messiah comes, he's going to have to gather the Jewish people outside of Israel. They're going to be in the desert. Jews are going to be in the desert. Question if you take that literally or figuratively. But the Jews are in the desert, Mashiach, the Messiah is going to bring them into the land of Israel. You're going to say, what do you mean? Jews aren't going to be here. Right? Essentially, could be the Jews are going to spit out. Now, you're going to tell me we have nuclear weapons. Don't tell anyone. So, it's hard to imagine. Very hard to imagine. After 2,000 years, or more, Jews come back to the land's flourishing in many ways. What, we're going to get thrown out? We're going to be in the desert. Again, practically speaking, hard to imagine. You could have, a left-wing government, that could give away the land, which, at one point, they want to give 95% of the West Bank, which would be totally undefensible today. Right, or indefensible, I think that's the word. Indefensible, if you gave it back to the Arabs, and thank God Arafat didn't take it. Right, but we could do it to ourselves. In theory, do it to ourselves, get thrown out. So what is the Torah telling me? The Torah says if you act and do these abominations with these forbidden relations, in the land of Israel, doing it outside of Israel is also bad, right? That's no question. But doing it in the land of Israel is worse because you're in the palace of the king. Why some of the commentaries say whatever happened in Sodom is bad. No question. Everyone agrees it's bad. Problem is, why destroy them? Why wipe them out? Some of the commentaries say because they're in the palace of the king. There are certain things, the palace of the king, God's not going to tolerate. And this, God didn't tolerate and destroyed them, totally destroyed them, because they're very bad, very wicked. All right, very much against God. So what does the Torah here say? The Torah says if you go according to abominations, forbidden relationships, and all that, land will spit you out. So there's a condition. God made a condition with creation, because the Torah says God created, God finished creating, He finished everything on the sixth day. The sixth day. Why the sixth day? Every other day it says the fifth. It says a fourth day, a fifth day, a third day, a second day. Why does it say the sixth day? And so Rashi says God made a condition with creation. Everything's going to be solidified. The Jews are going to accept the Torah. So why the sixth day? The sixth day is 6th of Sivan. Represents the 6th of Sivan. What's the 6th of Sivan? Matan Torah. That's when God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. Very good. Right? So there's a condition. God made a condition with the world to solidify the world if the Jews are going to accept the Torah. Now, if the Jews accept the Torah, very good. And if the Jews do bad things, still be a remnant left of Jews. God not going to totally destroy the Jews. Okay. But at the end of the day, the Torah says if you don't do what you're supposed to do, God will spit you out of the land. It's happened twice. Could happen before the Messiah comes also. Again, unlikely. If I were a betting man, all the money I don't have, I would say it's probably not going to happen, but we don't know. Right? Nobody knows. But here the Torah says, my Rebbe says it many times. Many, many times. I'm not worried what's going on in Iran and other countries. And I'm not worried about the Arabs. Not worried about any of this. What am I worried about? I'm worried about Jews that sin in the land. And if you sin outside the land, it's not as bad, it's still bad. But if you're doing it in the palace of the king, the punishment could be so severe, you do these abominations. Punishment could be so severe, we could be spit out of the land. Now, as we know, if you don't know, you find out now. The gay capital of the world is in Tel Aviv. All right, a lot of gays, a lot of homosexuals, lesbians, in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is still part of Israel. All right, it's still part of Israel. Tel Aviv is holier than New York. Right? It's holier than Crown Heights. It's holier than other places. Right? Regardless of what's going on, it still has holiness. Because the land is holiness. But at the same time, when you do certain things in the land, God's patience runs thin. So yeah, punishment could be God spits us out. Nobody wants to go through that. Right? But here the Torah tells me. Right? The character be happy. No interpretation there. Torah says if you go after these abominations, God will spit you out. God will spit you out of the land. Right? So the reality is, you're right, we got problems with the Arabs. Things flare up from time to time. And people get killed. It's tragic. But what kills? Why are there bad decrees? There's only one reason. There are bad decrees because of sin. That's it. Sin destroys. Payback. We're in the palace of the king. It's worse. Right? 10 times worse. Right? So people want to come and they want to live in the land. You better uphold what the land says. Right? What God wants. Because if not, it'll be 10 times worse. You're better off being outside of Israel. You still get punished, no question, but there's greater punishment in the land. The land is holiness. You can't mess up while you're in the land to the best of your ability. Mordechai Pogromansky, of blessed memory, tells her genius, told her Sturmbach when Sturmbach was coming to Israel, they wanted a blessing from him. So he told her, he said, I wish I could go, but I'd be so afraid. God forbid you do anything wrong in the land. Speak Lashon Hara in the land. It's 10 times worse. Any transgressions, 10 times worse. Right? You got to be careful of this, careful of that. He said, I couldn't do it. Mordechai Pogromansky said, I can't do it. I wouldn't be able to uphold the holiness in the land. Right? Until he heard, self-sacrifice, my Rebbe was willing to have to go and live in the land. Then he acquiesced and gave him a blessing. But to come into the land is not so simple. You don't want to mess up while you're here. You don't want to mess up anywhere. But if you're in the palace of the king, it's worse. If you're in the palace of the king, it doesn't matter. The Arabs, everything else that goes on that's negative will never happen if the Jews in Israel do what they're supposed to do. You tell me it's going to be anti-Semitism and all this till the end of days, till the Messiah comes true. We can bring the Messiah in a good way. Imagine, if everyone in Israel did teshuvah, all the Jews there did teshuvah, repented, trying to live at a high level. Imagine what it would be like. You got to say impossible. I don't know if it's impossible, but, maybe highly unlikely. True? That could be. But at the same time, guess what? That would happen. Don't worry about the Arabs, even though they're on their last legs. The evil inclination's on its last leg. You wouldn't have to worry. Because we're doing Torah and mitzvahs, we have the guarding. We have a shmirah, as it's called. Right? The Torah protects. But if you don't have, if you don't have enough Torah and other people doing terrible things, Torah is going to have difficulty protecting. Right? Protecting across the board. If they have free will, yeah. But again, when you're doing, what the Torah says, abominations, immorality, and you're doing these terrible things in the palace of the king, punishment absolutely severe, right? The Torah here says the punishment is you do any of these abominations, you'll be disgorged, you'll be thrown out. That's what disgorged means, you'll be thrown out. Not only that, in verse 29, it says, people doing so will be cut off. They get double whammy here. It's one thing, you get spit out of the land. Another thing to be spiritually cut off. Being spiritually cut off means you don't have a portion of the world to come. That's bad. 100%, that's bad. Right? So anyone who comes and wants to live in the land, darn well better uphold what we're supposed to do at the highest level we can. Reason being, because the land can spit us out. We are our own worst enemy. Right? We're going to think, we got the land, we got this real powerful army, a navy and all that, and we're the strongest army in the Middle East. Okay. Is that a guarantee? No. Not a guarantee. If there's strong Torah protects. You need a standing army. Even the time of King David, you need a standing army. You always need a standing army, but you need Torah learning. Torah learning protects. There have been a lot of, mess ups over the years. So the great Israeli army, they're not infallible. Definitely not infallible. They need the protection. And the protection of Torah. They scoff on it, they make fun of it, this, that, all these secular Jews. Saying it's got no power, wasting your time, go get a real job, don't be a sponge, don't be a parasite. At least go out and get a job. Something's going to pay money, not just learning these ancient texts. These ancient texts and the learning that goes on around the clock, that's what's protecting them. It's not about the might that they have. We have to remember. We have to remember how powerful the Torah is and what its potential is and what we can do. Because the army will not stand a chance against the enemies if there's not Torah, if there's no Torah learning. So seculars will say, okay, with the Torah learning, but not everyone has to learn. Not so many exemptions. Okay. We're going to do, take majority out. So instead of being 100,000 against one, it'll be 100,000 against two, or three, or four. The odds are still against you. With all the nations surrounding you, odds still against you. So why is Israel still existed and won wars they never should have won? Because the power of Torah. And even the higher ups and the generals or whatever, they can't give a rational explanation why certain things happen during certain wars. We understand it's the finger of God. Because anything else doesn't make sense. If you look how, strategy and different things, it doesn't make sense. So standing army you always need. Torah learning with the standing army also need. That's what protects. But if you didn't have Torah learning, and you have all these abominations going on, even with Torah learning, couldn't God say, well, you're not doing good enough, you're not having good enough, influence on these people that are making serious mistakes? So God can say, you know what, I've had enough. I'm not giving you this protection anymore. I'm going to spit you out. Could happen. It has happened. Why aren't we worried about that? As Marabi says, that's what you're worried about. You're not worried about these crazy people in Iran and Hezbollah and all this and Hamas. Shouldn't be worried about any of them. None of them can hold a finger to God. Nobody. But if we sin, we make ourselves weaker, then the protection is less. And if the protection is less, God forbid, we're susceptible. Right? They give me tens of thousands, God forbid, that could die. Right? Very depressing. Aren't you glad you listened to this video? Very depressing. But this is the promise of what the Torah says. You don't do what you're supposed to do, you're toast. Right? You will get thrown out of the land. It's happened. Right? It's happened twice. Totally expelled. It's a miracle we're back in this land. I don't think there's any question. Some people say, the UN, threw little trinkets at the Jewish people because of the Holocaust. They, allowed us to have Eretz Yisrael. Okay? For whatever reason, it's an absolute miracle. Whether you say it comes out, from the Holocaust, it's a miracle in and of itself, etc. Whatever the reason. I don't think there's any question. The fact that Jewish people survived here for so long, it's a miracle. I think that's clear. But at the same time, we want that miracle to continue. We want that spiritual influence to continue. The army will not win if there's not Torah learning. It's not strong Torah learning. Because, where you have the greatest Torah learning, which is here in the land of Israel, I don't think there's any question. But you also have the greatest amount of impurity. You have devil worshiping. I've heard such things. Kind of crazy. But where you have the greatest spirituality, you have the greatest amount of impurity against it. Right? Impurity has to try and offset it. Right? So we can say on one hand, you got tens of thousands learning Torah. It's unbelievable at a very high level, for this generation. And then you got all these gays and lesbians in Tel Aviv. Mind-boggling. Two extremes. Two totals extremes. Same time, you still need to strengthen Torah. We can't be weak in Torah. We can't let our guard down. Have to be strong every day. Have to work hard every day. It's a grind. It's hard. But if you don't do that, we don't stand a chance. Torah's the antidote, remember. The Gemara says, God created the evil inclination. And the Gemara answers, what's the antidote? Torah. But even with Torah, the Gemara says you need heavenly help to overcome the evil inclination. Torah enough is not enough. Sorry, Torah alone is not enough. So I need the help of God himself. You can say, wow, it's pretty sad. We can even overcome the evil inclination. We need help, okay? That's the generation we live in. I don't think there's any question. Same time, we got to strengthen our learning. We got to add to our learning. We got to add to guarding our eyes, guarding our thoughts, all these things. Because we don't want to get spit out of the land. We don't want to lose the land. The land is precious. The land is holy. The land itself, even though God's presence is technically not here, we don't see. We don't see and witness the miracles like during the first and second temple. Okay. I don't think there's any question. Anyone who comes to Jerusalem, no matter where they come from, right? They come from Tel Aviv, they go to Tiberias, they go to other places. They come to Jerusalem, they feel different. Why do they feel different? They'll say Tel Aviv is like a real modern city. Jerusalem also is a modern city. Yeah, but the atmosphere is different. Anyone who's been here knows the atmosphere is different. Just walking the streets, walking, in history. Walking throughout Jewish history. See the Western Wall, see the outside of the wall. Yeah, it's a lot of good things here. A lot of power here spiritually. Got to use it right. When we don't use it right, this is what happens. You go according to these abominations, what's God going to tell you? I should spit you out. Totally, should spit us out. Obviously, we don't want that. We want to repent. But if you're going to come, you got to come and do the right thing. Because we don't do the right thing, what does God say? Payback. Serious payback. Kaufman's language, chump don't want it, chump don't get it. And he will take you and just spit you out. So we have to work hard. We have to work harder. We have to be stronger in our mitzvah observance, our belief in God, our faith in God, that God runs the world, God's the one in charge. And I have to see what potentially, God forbid, could be the strong repercussions of our actions. So I remind everyone I have a class on duties of heart every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Eastern time. I have 2 Q&As, Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers, every Saturday, 2:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Israel time. Book of Leviticus, chapter 16, Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, and 4 o'clock Israel time. No-Hide Nations, No-Hide Laws, finishing up Sunday, 2:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Israel time. I also have conversion classes. Anyone interested in any of this, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, or beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. Take a look at my YouTube channel, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. I have a lot of videos there in the Torah portion of the week. Holidays, conversion, Q&As, ethics of our fathers, controversial issues. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.